I was a night shift ER nurse when my name showed up on a hospital report accusing me of stealing money meant for poor patients. At first, I thought it was a clerical error. Then my phone started buzzing with missed calls, and the hospital froze the small medical fund I had built dollar by dollar. At home, my husband calmly took the checkbook off the kitchen counter and put it in his briefcase, like it belonged there. That was the moment I understood that everything I believed about helping people was about to collapse. Checklist xác nhận đúng yêu cầu của bạn. I was a night shift ER nurse when my name showed up on a hospital report accusing me of stealing money meant for poor patients. It was 3:17 a.m., and I was standing by the medication cart, checking a dosage label for the third time because my eyes burned from being awake too long. The printer at the nurse's station hummed, spit out a few pages, then went quiet. I picked them up without thinking. My name was right there, spelled correctly, bolded at the top. At first, I assumed it was a clerical error. Hospitals run on mistakes that get fixed before sunrise. A decimal in the wrong place, a code entered twice. I had seen worse. I folded the paper once and slid it into my pocket, telling myself I would ask accounting after my shift. The monitors kept beeping. Someone down the hall was vomiting. A resident asked me for help finding a vein. Life went on. By 4 o'clock, my phone started buzzing in my scrub pocket. I did not look at it right away. In the ER, you learn to finish what is in front of you. When I finally checked, there were 6 missed calls, 2 from an unknown number, 3 from the hospital's administrative office, 1 from my husband, Gavin. I stepped into the supply room, leaned against the cold metal shelf, and called the admin number back. A woman I barely knew answered. Her voice was careful, like she was walking on a wet floor. "Maya, we need you to come in early tomorrow morning. There are questions about the community medical fund." "What kind of questions?" I asked. She paused. I could hear papers moving. "We cannot discuss details over the phone. The account has been temporarily frozen." Frozen. The word sat heavy in my chest. That fund was not a line item in a budget. It was something I had built myself. Tips patients tried to press into my hand. Cash left in thank you cards. Small online donations from church groups and local businesses. I kept records. Every receipt. Every payment. It paid for insulin, inhalers, follow-up visits, things that kept people out of the ER. "I can bring the documentation," I said. "There has to be a mistake." "We will review everything," she replied, still careful. "Just come in at 9. When I hung up, the supply room felt smaller. The air smelled like disinfectant and plastic. I stood there longer than necessary, staring at a box of gloves, telling myself to breathe. At the end of my shift, the sky over Phoenix was already turning pale. The heat would come later. For now, the air was dry and cool. I drove home with the radio off, replaying the word frozen in my head. I parked in the driveway, sat there for a moment, then went inside. Gavin was already awake. He was sitting at the kitchen table in a pressed shirt, coffee mug near his hand, laptop open. He looked up and smiled, the same smile he always used in the mornings. "You are home early," he said. "I am done with my shift," I replied. I set my bag down and reached for the checkbook that usually sat on the counter, next to a stack of unopened mail. It was not there. Gavin closed his laptop and stood up. He picked up the checkbook from the other end of the table and slid it into his briefcase. The motion was smooth, almost automatic, like putting on a watch. "I will take care of the finances for a bit," he said. "You look exhausted." I watched his hand zip the case shut. It was a small thing, a detail I might have missed any other day. He did not ask. He did not explain. He just did it, calmly, as if it belonged there. "Why?" I asked. "There is no reason to worry," he said. "I got a call too. Probably some paperwork issue. Let me handle it so you can rest." I nodded, because I was tired, and because we had been married long enough that I had learned how easy it was to let him handle things. I went to the bedroom, peeled off my scrubs, and lay down without setting an alarm. Sleep did not come. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Renee. Renee worked nights with me. She was the kind of person who noticed everything and said little. When I answered, she did not waste time. "Maya, did you hear?" she asked. Hear what? There is talk about the fund. Accounting flagged irregular transfers. They are saying it looks intentional. My stomach tightened. That is impossible. I know, she said. But people are talking. Be careful today. After we hung up, I lay there staring at the ceiling fan as it turned slowly. By the time I got dressed and drove back to the hospital, my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I arrived early, sat in my car, and watched staff walk past without looking at me. The meeting room was small and windowless. 2 people from administration sat across from me. A folder lay on the table. My name was on the tab. They slid papers toward me. Printouts of transfers, dates, amounts, numbers that looked clean and ordinary, too clean. These funds were redirected through a secondary account, one of them said. An account linked to your household. That is my husband's account, I replied, before I could stop myself. They exchanged a glance. Then you understand why this is serious. I reached into my bag and pulled out my own records. Handwritten notes, receipts, photos of patients with their permission. The woman scanned them, nodded, but did not look relieved. We will need time, she said. Until then, you are suspended from handling any donations. And Maya, I need to be honest. There is pressure to make an example. When I left the room, my legs felt weak. In the hallway, a woman I recognized from triage avoided my eyes. Another whispered to someone else and stopped when she saw me. The ER had never felt hostile before. Now it did. At home, Gavin listened as I explained everything. He did not interrupt. When I finished, he reached across the table and took my hand. This is exactly why I told you to let me handle the money, he said softly. You trust people too much. I kept records, I said. Everything is documented. I know, he replied, but documentation does not always protect you. I will talk to a lawyer friend. We will get ahead of this. Den exclaimed. That night, I lay in bed listening to the hum of the air conditioner. The house felt different, quieter, as if something had been moved and not put back. Around midnight, I got up for water. Gavin's briefcase was by the door. It was slightly open. Inside, I saw the checkbook and a folded stack of papers I did not recognize. I did not touch them. I closed the case gently and went back to bed. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. That was always my instinct. Give people time. Assume the best. The next morning, my email was full. Messages from donors asking why their payments bounced. One message from a local blog asking for comment on allegations involving a nurse and a missing fund. I sat at the kitchen table, my coffee untouched, my phone face down. Gavin kissed my cheek on his way out. Do not worry, he said. This will pass. After he left, I opened my laptop and logged into the fund's account. Or tried to. The password had been changed. I stared at the error message until the words blurred. It was not fear I felt then. It was a slow, sinking certainty. Like realizing the floor under your feet is not solid, but you have already stepped forward. I thought about every patient who had looked at me with relief when I told them their medication was covered. I thought about how easily trust could be moved from one set of hands to another. I sat there in the quiet kitchen, the checkbook gone, the account locked, my name already stained, and I understood, with a clarity that made my chest ache, that the life I thought I was living had been built on something I had never actually seen. Everything I believed about helping people was about to collapse. By noon, the heat had settled over Phoenix like a lid. Even inside the house, the air felt thick, unmoving. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, the same error message still blinking back at me every time I tried to log into the fund account. I had changed the password myself only a month earlier. I knew it by muscle memory. Now it rejected me as if I had never belonged there. I closed the laptop and pressed my palms flat against the table. The wood was warm. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past, brakes squealing. Normal sounds, a normal day. My life had not stopped just because my name was suddenly tied to a word like theft. I showered, changed clothes, and forced myself to eat a piece of toast. At 1 p.m, my phone rang again. This time, it was a number I recognized. Maya Hart? A man asked. Yes. This is Detective Shaw. I work with financial crimes. I would like to ask you a few questions. My throat went dry. Am I being charged with something? Not at this time, he said evenly. But there are inconsistencies we need to clarify. Would you be willing to meet? I agreed without hesitation. Saying no would only make things worse. We set a time for the next morning. When the call ended, I sat very still. I had spent years in emergency rooms, watching people get blindsided by accidents, heart attacks, sudden losses. I had always believed that as long as you lived honestly, the worst things would come from outside, not from your own home. That afternoon, Renee stopped by after her shift. She did not knock. She used the spare key I had given her years ago. "Do not ask me if you are okay," she said as soon as she walked in. "You are not." I let out a short laugh that surprised both of us. "No, I am not." She sat across from me, elbows on the table, eyes sharp. "Tell me everything." Slowly. I did. From the report at the nurse's station, to the frozen account, to Gavin taking the checkbook without asking, I left out nothing. Renee listened without interrupting, her face unreadable. When I finished, she said quietly, "Who has access to the fund account besides you?" "No one," I replied. "At least, no one officially." "And unofficially?" I hesitated. "Gavin knows the basics. He helped me set up the online transfers. He said it would make things easier." Renee nodded once. "That is a problem. He is my husband," I said, more defensively than I meant to. "I trusted him." "I know," she replied. "That does not mean you are wrong. It means you are human." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the street. "People are already choosing sides," she added. "You need to stop assuming this will resolve itself." After she left, I went through the house with new eyes. The desk in the living room where Gavin sometimes worked late. The filing cabinet in the spare room. I opened drawers I had never bothered with before. Old tax returns, manuals. Nothing that screamed guilt. Nothing that proved innocence either. That evening, Gavin came home later than usual. He loosened his tie, poured himself a drink, and sat across from me. "I spoke to someone," he said. "This kind of investigation can get ugly." "Why did you change the password?" I asked. He did not flinch. "I did not want anyone else accessing it while things are unclear." "You locked me out," I said. "For your own protection," he replied calmly. "If something improper happened, it is better that it does not look like you were actively involved." The way he said involved made my stomach twist. "And the money?" I asked. "Where is it?" "It is being traced," he said. "We just need to be patient." Patience. The word felt heavy. I went to bed early, but sleep stayed out of reach. Sometime after midnight, I heard Gavin get up. His footsteps were quiet. I listened as a drawer opened and closed. When the bedroom door clicked shut again, I stared at the dark ceiling and told myself not to imagine things. The next morning, I met Detective Shaw in a small office downtown. He was younger than I expected, his suit slightly wrinkled, his tone professional but not unkind. "Walk me through the fund," he said. From the beginning, I told him how it started. A patient who could not afford insulin, a church bake sale, an envelope with $50 inside and a thank you note. I explained how I tracked everything, how I never touched the money for personal use. He listened, typing notes, occasionally asking for dates or amounts. Then he slid a paper toward me. "This is a transfer made 3 weeks ago," he said. "Do you recognize it?" I shook my head. "No, it went to an intermediary account," he continued. "That account then transferred the funds again within hours." "To where?" He met my eyes. "To an account under your husband's name." The room felt suddenly too small. I stared at the numbers on the page, the date circled in pen. "That day," I said slowly, "I was working a double shift." Detective Shaw nodded. "We confirmed that. When I left his office, my legs felt unsteady. Outside, the sun was blinding. Cars passed. People talked on their phones. Life went on without noticing that something inside me had cracked open. At home, I confronted Gavin with the paper. He looked at it, then back at me. "They are making assumptions," he said. "Transfers can be misinterpreted." "You moved the money," I said, "on a day I was not even home." His jaw tightened. "You are letting them turn you against me." I wanted to argue, to demand explanations, but something held me back, a sense that if I pushed too hard, he would only close further. I nodded instead and said nothing. That night, I could not stay still. I went back to the desk and powered up the old computer Gavin used. It took longer than I expected to boot. When it did, an email program opened automatically. The inbox was full. I was not snooping for drama. I was looking for clarity. I searched for keywords: fund, transfer, account. What I found was methodical. Emails between Gavin and someone listed only as R. Discussions about timing, about keeping amounts low enough not to trigger alerts, about using my name as a shield. One line stopped me cold. "As long as Maya believes this is about helping people, she will not look too closely." I sat there for a long time, the glow of the screen lighting the room. There was no rage yet, just a hollow understanding. This had not been a mistake. It had been a plan. When I closed the laptop, the house felt unfamiliar, as if I had walked into someone else's life by accident. I went to the kitchen, poured water, and watched my hand tremble slightly as I lifted the glass. For years, I had believed that trust was a virtue, that if your intentions were clean, the details would take care of themselves. Sitting alone in that quiet house, I realized how easily trust could be used as cover. I did not cry. I did not call anyone. I opened a notebook and began to write down dates, amounts, names, facts, not feelings. If this was going to become a fight, I would not fight it with emotion. By the time Gavin came to bed, I had already made a decision. I would stop assuming the best. I would start proving the truth. And whatever came next, I would not let anyone use my name again. The next night I was back in the ER, but nothing felt the same. The automatic doors slid open with their familiar sigh. The smell of antiseptic hit me as it always had, and yet I felt like I was walking into a place that no longer belonged to me. People looked up when I passed. Some nodded, some did not. A few looked away too quickly. I tied my hair back, clipped my badge to my scrub top, and went to work. That was the one thing I still knew how to do without thinking. Around 10:40 p.m., the paramedics rushed in with a woman in her late 60s. She was small, her gray hair pulled back loosely, her skin pale and clammy. One of the medics shouted her vitals as they transferred her to the bed. Severe dehydration. Blood sugar dangerously high. She was barely conscious. "Name?" the charge nurse asked. "Maria Ortega," the medic replied. "Lives alone. Neighbors found her on the floor." As we worked, I recognized the name. Not immediately. It surfaced slowly, like something floating up from deep water. Mrs. Ortega. I had met her months earlier. She came in regularly for complications related to diabetes. Quiet. Polite. Always apologizing for taking up space. I started an IV while the doctor gave orders. Mrs. Ortega's eyes fluttered open for a second. She looked at me, her gaze unfocused. "You came back," she whispered. "I am here," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You are safe." She squeezed my fingers weakly. "They said it was paid." My hand stilled for half a second. "What was paid?" I asked gently. "The medicine," she murmured. "The man said your fund took care of it." My chest tightened. I finished securing the IV and forced myself to keep moving. We stabilized her enough to send her for tests. As they wheeled her out, I stood there longer than necessary, staring at the empty bed. An hour later, I found Renee at the nurse's station charting. "Mrs. Ortega," I said quietly. "Do you remember her?" Renee looked up. "Yes." "Why?" "She said her medication was supposed to be covered by my fund," I replied. "But she ended up here anyway." Renee's mouth tightened. That is not the first time I have heard something like that. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "What do you mean?" Renee leaned closer, lowering her voice. "There have been a few families asking billing why they are still being charged after getting confirmation of payment. Accounting brushed it off, said it was a delay." "How many?" I asked. "Enough that it made me uncomfortable," she said. I nodded slowly. "Can you pull the billing notes on Mrs. Ortega?" Renee glanced around, then logged into the system. She scrolled, clicked, frowned. "There," she said, pointing at the screen. It says the payment was authorized 2 weeks ago, full coverage for insulin and follow-up visits. But it was never applied, I said. No, Renee replied. It just sits there as pending. Pending. Another word that felt like a weight. I worked the rest of my shift on autopilot. My hands did what they always had. My mind kept circling back to Mrs. Ortega's words. The man said, "Your fund took care of it." I could picture it too easily. Someone confident. Reassuring. Speaking on my behalf. By the time my shift ended, the sun was just starting to rise again. Phoenix mornings had a sharpness to them before the heat took over. I sat in my car in the parking lot and stared at the steering wheel, replaying everything. At home, Gavin was already gone. His briefcase was missing. On the counter lay a note in his neat handwriting. Running early meetings. Do not stress today. We will talk later. I did not tear it up. I folded it and put it in my pocket, then went to the spare room where the old filing cabinet stood. This time, I opened it with purpose. I pulled out everything related to the fund. Old spreadsheets, bank statements, donation emails. I spread them across the floor. Patterns began to emerge once I stopped looking for reassurance and started looking for inconsistencies. Transfers always happened on nights I worked late. Amounts were rounded. Timing was precise. The money left the fund, passed through an account I barely recognized, then disappeared. By late morning, I had a headache and a notebook full of notes. I took a break only when my phone rang. It was Mrs. Ortega's daughter. "I got your number from the nurse," she said, her voice strained. "My mother says you help people." I swallowed. "I try to." "They told us the medication was covered," she continued. "Then we got a bill. We did not understand. I am not calling to complain. I just want to know if we did something wrong." "No," I said immediately. "You did nothing wrong." After we hung up, I sat very still. This was no longer just about me. Whatever was happening had consequences, real ones. People were getting hurt. That afternoon, I drove to the small pharmacy Mrs. Ortega used. It was wedged between a laundromat and a closed nail salon. The pharmacist recognized me. "Oh, you are the nurse," he said, "from the hospital." "Yes," I replied. "I wanted to ask about a payment authorization you received." He pulled up the record. "We got a call," he said. "A man claiming to represent your fund. Very professional. He gave all the right details. It's problems." "Did you meet him in person?" I asked. "No," he said. "Just the call. Do you still have the number?" He printed out the call log and handed it to me. The number was unfamiliar, but something about it made my stomach drop. I knew that area code. It was local. It was too close. When I got home, Gavin's car was already in the driveway. He was in the living room, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, like he had been there all day. "You look tired," he said. "I met a patient today," I replied. "She thought my fund paid for her medicine. It did not." He sighed. "I told you, these things take time." I took the printed call log out of my bag and set it on the table. "That number," I said. "Who does it belong to?" He glanced at it, then back at me. "I do not know." "It is local," I said. "It called multiple pharmacies. On nights I worked." His expression hardened just slightly. "You are letting stress get to you." "No," I said quietly. "I am letting facts speak." He stood up. "You are starting to sound paranoid." The word hit harder than I expected. I thought of Mrs. Ortega on the gurney, of her daughter's voice on the phone. "If I am paranoid," I said, "then show me the account. Unlock it. Let me see everything." For a moment, he said nothing. Then he picked up his briefcase and walked toward the door. "I am trying to protect us," he said over his shoulder. "You are making this harder than it needs to be." The door closed behind him with a soft click. I stood there, listening to the quiet. Then I picked up my notebook and added a new line. "Pharmacies contacted. Payments promised. Funds not delivered." Whatever this was, it was bigger than I had thought. And it had started long before my name showed up on that report. I looked down at my hands. They were steady now. If someone had been using my reputation to move money, then the first thing I had to do was take my name back. By the end of that week, The story had grown a life of its own. It started small, the way these things always do. A local blog posted a short piece about a hospital nurse under investigation for mismanaging community donations. No names at first, just enough detail that anyone who worked at the hospital could guess. By the next morning, my name was there in black letters, followed by words like alleged and under review. I did not open the comments. I did not need to. I could already hear them in my head. At the hospital, my badge stopped working. I stood in front of the employee entrance, swiped once, then again. The red light blinked back at me. A security guard I recognized approached, his expression apologetic. "Administration asked me to escort you," he said quietly. "To where?" I asked. "Human resources." The walk down the hallway felt longer than usual. Conversations dropped as we passed. Someone coughed. A phone rang. Normal sounds filtered through a layer of tension. In the small HR office, a woman slid a paper across the desk. "Temporary suspension," she said. "With pay, for now. You are not to access patient financial records or handle donations until the review is complete." I nodded. Arguing would change nothing. When I left the building, the sun hit my face hard, and for the first time in years, I had nowhere to go. At home, I turned on the television without watching it. My phone buzzed constantly, messages from donors asking what happened, a voicemail from a church group that had supported the fund for years. I listened to none of them. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the empty space where the checkbook used to be. That afternoon, Renee came by again. She did not try to soften her voice. "They are building a narrative," she said, "and you are not part of it." "What narrative?" I asked, though I already knew. "That you meant well," she replied, "but you crossed a line. That you got overwhelmed. That maybe you helped yourself a little too." I closed my eyes. I would never. "I know," she said, "but belief does not matter right now. Proof does." She helped me organize what I had. We laid everything out on the dining table. Timelines, transfer amounts, call logs from pharmacies, notes from families. It looked messy, but underneath it was a pattern, clean and deliberate. "He knew exactly how much to take," Renee said. "Enough to matter, not enough to trigger alarms." That evening, Gavin came home late again. He seemed irritated when he saw the papers spread across the table. "This is not healthy," he said. "You are feeding into their suspicion." "You mean your suspicion?" I replied. He stopped short. "What is that supposed to mean?" "I mean," I said evenly, "that every trail leads back to you." For the first time, his calm cracked. "You think I did this to you?" he asked, incredulous. "After everything I have done to support you?" "You used my name," I said. "You called pharmacies. You promised payments that never arrived." He laughed once, sharp and humorless. "You are making yourself the hero of a story that does not exist." That night, I slept on the couch. Around 3 a.m, I woke to the sound of my phone vibrating. A message from an unknown number. "You should stop digging." I stared at the screen until it went dark. The next day, a certified letter arrived. It was from the hospital's legal department, outlining potential consequences if wrongdoing was confirmed. Loss of license, criminal charges. The language was careful, impersonal. It felt like reading my own obituary, written by someone who had never met me. I called Detective Shaw. "They are escalating," I said. "I think he knows I am onto him." "Do not confront him again," Shaw replied. "And do not tip your hand. We are watching the accounts." "How long?" I asked. "As long as it takes," he said. "But you need to be patient." Patience. Again, that afternoon, another article came out, this one naming me directly. A photo of me outside the hospital, taken years earlier, was attached. The headline framed me as a cautionary tale. Good intentions gone wrong. My mother called. She cried. She asked what she had done to raise a daughter like this. I told her nothing. That it was not over. I was not sure she believed me. Gavin did not come home that night. I lay awake listening to the house settle, every creak sounding like a decision being made without me. When he finally walked in near dawn, he smelled like whiskey. He did not apologize. "I spoke to a lawyer," he said. "If this goes public, It will ruin us. There is no us, I replied. He froze. For a second, I saw something else in his eyes. Calculation, fear. You are overreacting, he said. Once they finish the review, this will blow over. It will not, I said quietly. Too many people were hurt. He did not respond. He went into the bedroom and shut the door. The following morning, I met with Detective Shaw again. I brought everything: the call logs, the emails I had found, the note from the pharmacy. This is enough to move forward, he said. But we need one more thing. What? I asked. Confirmation, he replied. We need him to repeat the behavior. For examples. I understood then what he was asking: to wait, to let it happen again. That evening, I did something I had never done before. I sent an email to the donor list, explaining that the fund would be reopened temporarily under review to cover urgent cases. I copied Gavin, keeping the tone calm, hopeful. Within hours, the account showed activity. I did not touch it. I did not alert anyone. I just watched the numbers move the way they always had. Later that night, Gavin sat across from me at the table, his phone in his hand. See, he said, things are already improving. I looked at him and realized how thoroughly he had underestimated me. He thought my silence meant surrender. He thought my reputation would keep shielding him. I went to bed knowing that by morning there would be another transfer, another promise made in my name. And this time, it would not disappear quietly. It would leave a trail no one could erase. The transfer happened at 2:14 a.m. I was awake when it did, sitting on the edge of the bed with my laptop open, the room lit only by the glow of the screen. Phoenix was quiet at that hour, the kind of quiet that made every sound inside the house feel louder. The refrigerator hummed. The air conditioner clicked on and off. Gavin's phone buzzed once on the nightstand and went still. On my screen, the fund balance dropped by an even amount. Not large, not small. The same number I had seen before, again and again, once I knew how to look. I took a slow breath and wrote the time down in my notebook. Then I waited. At 2:36 a.m., a second transaction appeared. The money moved from the intermediary account to Gavin's, clean, efficient, like a practiced routine. I closed the laptop without a sound. The next morning, I forwarded screenshots to Detective Shaw using the secure channel he had given me. He replied with a single sentence: "Good. Do nothing else." Doing nothing turned out to be harder than I expected. By mid-morning, my phone was full again. Donors asking if the fund was truly open, a reporter requesting comment, a voicemail from hospital administration reminding me of my suspension terms. Each message tightened the knot in my chest. I did not respond. I let everything pile up, just as Shaw had instructed. Renee came by around noon with groceries I had not asked for. "You look like you have not slept," she said, setting bags on the counter. "I slept," I replied. "I just did not rest." She nodded, as if that made sense. "Any movement?" "Yes," I said. "Last night." Her expression sharpened. "Good." We sat at the table and went over the timeline again. With the new transfer, the pattern was undeniable. Gavin acted only when he believed the fund was active and scrutiny was low. He used my name like a passkey, opening doors that would have stayed closed otherwise. "He counts on your reputation," Renee said. "That is the real asset." That word stuck with me. Asset. I had spent years thinking of trust as something soft, something human. I was starting to see it the way he did. As leverage. That afternoon, I went back to the pharmacy Mrs. Ortega used. This time, I did not ask questions. I listened. The pharmacist showed me a handwritten note left behind by the delivery driver, a phone number scribbled in the corner. Same area code, same cadence. "He always called late," the pharmacist said. "After hours, said it was urgent." Urgent, another word Gavin liked to use. On the drive home, I noticed a car behind me for 3 turns in a row. A gray sedan, nothing distinctive. It could have been coincidence. Phoenix was full of cars. Still, my hands tightened on the steering wheel. At home, Gavin was in a good mood. He was cooking dinner, music playing softly from his phone. "They lifted part of the freeze," he said casually. See? I told you this would work out. I watched him stir the pot, move around the kitchen like everything was normal. Did you talk to anyone today? I asked. Just work, he replied. Why? No reason, I said. That night, while he slept, I went through his briefcase. I did not rush. I did not panic. I moved slowly, as if I were someone else entirely. Inside were contracts, receipts, a second phone wrapped in a charging cable. I turned it on. No lock. He had never imagined I would look. The messages were sparse, written in short lines. Funds cleared. Use the same channel. She still believes. I took photos of everything and put the phone back exactly where I found it. In the morning, I met Detective Shaw in a parking garage downtown. He reviewed the photos, his jaw tightening slightly. This confirms intent, he said. He is not reacting. He is executing. What happens now? I asked. Now we let him think he is winning, Shaw replied, and we widen the lens. Widening the lens meant following the money beyond Gavin. Over the next few days, Shaw's team traced the intermediary account to a shell company registered under a name I did not recognize. The address led to a mailbox service. The paperwork was thin, just enough to pass at a glance. He did not do this alone, Shaw said during one of our calls, but he is the hinge. Meanwhile, the public narrative hardened. Another article appeared, this one quoting anonymous hospital sources. Words like pattern and breach were used freely. I stopped reading entirely. Gavin noticed my silence. You have been very quiet, he said one evening. That worries me. I am tired, I replied. Do not withdraw, he said, reaching for my hand. That makes you look guilty. I'm Selv. I pulled my hand away. Stop telling me how I look. For a moment, his face went blank. Then, the familiar calm returned. I am trying to help, he said. The next call from Detective Shaw came 2 days later. We have enough to bring him in, he said. But timing matters. We want him on record. How? I asked. By letting him speak, Shaw replied. On his own terms. That was when the plan shifted. I sent Gavin an email from the fund account, asking him to handle a new urgent request. I made it sound routine, grateful, trusting. Within hours, the second phone buzzed again. We can move it tonight. I forwarded the message to Shaw. At 11:58 p.m., the gray sedan appeared outside our house. It did not park. It slowed, then moved on. At 12:06 a.m., the transfer happened. At 12:10 a.m., Shaw's team moved. I did not see the arrest. I was not there. I sat alone in the living room, the television off, my notebook open on my lap. When my phone rang, I answered on the first ring. He is in custody, Shaw said. For questioning. I closed my eyes. I felt nothing like relief. Just a deep, steady quiet. When Gavin came home the next morning, he looked different, smaller, tired. He set his keys down carefully, as if sound mattered. They asked a lot of questions, he said. I am sure they did, I replied. They are overreaching, he continued. This can still be managed. I looked at him then, really looked. At the man who had moved money meant for insulin and rent, who had spoken on my behalf without a second thought. No, I said. It cannot. He stared at me, something like disbelief flickering across his face. You would let them do this to me? He asked. I did not let anything happen, I replied. I stopped letting you hide. That afternoon, Mrs. Ortega's daughter called again. This time, her voice was lighter. They fixed the billing, she said. They said it was an error. I have debtors. I closed my eyes and leaned against the counter. I am glad, I said. So am I. After we hung up, I wrote one last line in my notebook. Pattern confirmed. Truth visible. I did not know how this would end. I only knew that the story Gavin had been telling in my name was finally breaking apart. And when it did, it would not be quietly. The house felt different after that. Not louder, not quieter, just thinner, as if the walls had lost some of their weight. Gavin moved through the rooms like a guest who did not know how long he was allowed to stay. He avoided my eyes. He avoided the kitchen when I was there. When he spoke, his words were careful, measured, chosen to leave as little trace as possible. 2 days after Detective Shaw questioned him, he sat across from me at the table and folded his hands. "We need to talk," he said. I did not look up from the notebook in front of me. "You have been talking for months." "This is different," he replied. "This is serious." I finally raised my eyes. "It has always been serious. You just did not think it applied to you." His jaw tightened. "You know they do not have the full picture." "What picture is missing?" I asked. "The one where you promised people medication in my name and took the money anyway?" He leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly, as if preparing a speech. "You see things too simply," he said. "Money moves all the time, funds are delayed, accounts are adjusted. No one was supposed to get hurt. But they did," I said. "And you knew it." He shook his head. "I was managing risk." That phrase landed heavily. Managing risk. As if people were variables. As if trust were a resource to be mined. "I need you to understand something," he continued. "If this turns into a criminal case, everything we have built disappears. Your career, our life." "Our life," I repeated. "Yes," he said quickly. "Do you think anyone will separate you from this? You are my wife. Your name is on the fund. You will be pulled down with me." There it was. Not fear, not regret. Strategy. "I have already been pulled down," I said. "You just assumed I would stay there quietly." He watched me, reassessing. "You do not have to be the one who pays for this," he said. "There are ways to contain damage." I closed the notebook and stood up. "Do not ask me to help you hide." His voice hardened. "Then you are choosing to burn everything." I met his gaze. "No, I am choosing to stop lying." That night, I slept with the bedroom door locked. The following morning, my lawyer called. Detective Shaw had suggested I retain counsel, not because I was a suspect, but because my name was central to the case. I agreed without hesitation. Her office was small and spare. She listened as I explained everything, from the fund's beginnings, to the shell account, to the second phone. "You did the right thing by documenting," she said when I finished. "But you need to prepare yourself. This will not resolve quickly." "I am not in a hurry," I replied. She studied me for a moment. "You should be. The longer this stays public, the more damage it does to you." On the drive home, I passed the hospital. I slowed without thinking, my eyes drifting to the ER entrance. For the first time since my suspension, I did not feel the urge to go inside. That version of my life was paused. I had to accept that. At home, I found an envelope taped to the door. Inside was a notice from the State Nursing Board. Not a charge. Not yet. Just a request for information. I sat on the floor and read it twice. When Gavin came home, he saw the envelope in my hand. "They are going after your license now," he said quietly. "No," I replied. "They are asking questions." "That is how it starts," he said. "This is exactly what I warned you about." "You warned me about being caught," I said. "Not about doing harm." His expression shifted then. Anger, finally breaking through. "You think I am the villain in some story you are telling yourself?" he snapped. "You think you are the victim." "I do not think I am the victim," I said. "I think I was used." He laughed bitterly. "You gave me access." "Yes," I said. "And you abused it." Silence filled the space between us. Then he stood. "If you will not help me," he said, "then at least do not get in my way." I watched him pack a bag that night. Not hurried, not frantic. He moved with intention, choosing shirts, folding them carefully. "Where will you go?" I asked. "A hotel," he said, "until this blows over." "It will not," I replied. He paused at the door. For a moment, he looked like someone I used to know. Then that passed. "You always did believe things had to be right," he said. "That was your weakness." The door closed behind him. The days that followed blurred together. Calls with my lawyer, emails from Detective Shaw, requests for documentation from the nursing board. Each conversation stripped away another layer of the life I thought I had. And yet, something inside me steadied. Without Gavin in the house, the quiet felt different. Cleaner. I slept better. I ate when I was hungry. I stopped jumping at every sound. One afternoon, I received a message from Mrs. Ortega's daughter. "They told us the fund will be overseen by the hospital now," she wrote. They said it was because of you. I stared at the words for a long time. Because of you could mean many things. I chose to read it the way that let me breathe. That evening, Detective Shaw called again. He is cooperating, he said. Partially. What does that mean? I asked. He admits to moving the money, Shaw replied. But he frames it as temporary borrowing. He says he intended to repay it. I let out a short, humorless breath. Did he say why? He says he was protecting you, Shaw said. I closed my eyes. Of course he did. He also says you knew, Shaw added. The words hit like cold water. That is not true, I said immediately. I know, Shaw replied, but that is the angle he is trying. After the call ended, I sat at the table and stared at the wall. This was the pivot point, the moment where his story would collide directly with mine. I opened my notebook again and flipped through the pages. Dates, times, transfers, screenshots, words he thought I would never see. I was not angry anymore. I was focused. That night, I drafted a statement for my lawyer. Not emotional, not defensive, just facts. I attached every piece of evidence I had. I sent it and closed the laptop. When I lay down to sleep, I thought about the version of myself who had believed trust was enough, who thought good intentions would protect her from harm. That version of me was gone. In her place was someone who understood that truth does not surface on its own. It has to be pulled into the light, even when doing so costs you everything familiar. And I was ready to pay that price. Once the statement was sent, there was no going back. The following morning, my lawyer called before I had even finished my coffee. Her voice was steady, professional, but there was an edge to it now. They reviewed your submission overnight, she said. It changes things. In what way? I asked. In every way that matters, she replied. The timeline you provided contradicts his account completely, especially the transfers that occurred while you were on documented hospital shifts. And braze. I closed my eyes and leaned back in the chair. Relief flickered briefly, then disappeared. Relief was premature. This was not over. It was only shifting shape. An hour later, Detective Shaw called. We pulled phone records from the secondary device, he said. The one you photographed. My stomach tightened. And? There are recordings, he continued. Voicemails he left for pharmacies and billing offices. He used your name, your credentials, your tone. I said nothing. One of them, Shaw added, is particularly clear. He says, "This is Maya Hart. Release the medication today. The fund will cover it." The words echoed in my head, wearing my voice like a mask. When can I hear it? I asked. Soon, he replied, but I wanted to prepare you. Hearing someone else speak as you can be. Unsettling. Unsettling was not the word. Violating was closer. That afternoon, I went to my lawyer's office to listen to the recordings. The room was quiet, except for the hum of the air conditioner. She pressed play. At first, I did not recognize it. The cadence was slightly off, the pauses calculated. Then I heard the familiar reassurance, the phrasing I used with patients when they were scared. "This is Maya Hart," the voice said. "I will take responsibility." My chest tightened. I had said those words 100 times in the ER. I had meant them every time. The recording ended. I stared at the wall, my vision blurred. "He studied you," my lawyer said quietly. "That is how manipulation works." I nodded. I could not speak. The next recording played. This one was different, shorter, more direct. "Transfer it tonight," his voice said. "She will not notice. She. Not my name. Just a placeholder." I felt something inside me harden. Whatever grief I had been holding on to cracked and fell away. There was clarity in its place. "These will be entered as evidence," my lawyer said, along with the financial trail and the device itself. "What about the nursing board?" I asked. "They requested an interview," she replied. "Voluntary. For now, for now." That evening, I returned home to find a package on the porch. No return address. Inside was a single envelope containing printed screenshots, the same transfers I had documented. Only these had handwritten notes in the margins. "You signed off. You benefited. Shared responsibility." My hands trembled slightly as I set the pages down. The handwriting was Gavin's, clean, precise, the same hand that once wrote me notes before my night shifts, telling me to drive safe. He was not just defending himself. He was preparing to pull me down with him. I called Detective Shaw immediately. "He sent me something," I said. "A message." "Do not respond," Shaw replied. "Bring it to us." The next day, I sat across from the nursing board panel. 3 people, neutral expressions. A recorder on the table. They asked about the fund, about my access, about my husband's role. I answered calmly. I did not embellish. I did not plead. I told them exactly what I had done and what I had not. One of them leaned forward. "Did you ever authorize your husband to speak on your behalf?" "No," I said. "Did you ever approve personal use of the funds?" "No." "Were you aware of the secondary account?" "No." They exchanged glances. After the interview, I sat in my car and stared at the steering wheel, the weight of the day pressing down on me. My phone buzzed. A message from Gavin. "We need to talk." "You are making this worse." I did not reply. Instead, I drove to the hospital. Not inside, just to the parking lot. I sat there watching ambulances come and go, watching nurses I knew walk past, their lives still intact. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine that mine might not return to what it had been. That night, Renee called. "They reinstated the billing for Mrs. Ortega," she said, "and 3 other families." Quietly. "That is good," I replied. "They are also talking about restructuring the fund," she added. "With oversight." I closed my eyes. "That is better." After we hung up, I went through the house one last time. I packed Gavin's remaining things into a box, not angrily, methodically, each item placed with care. When I was done, I taped it shut and set it by the door. On top, I placed the envelope he had sent me. The following week, the district attorney's office contacted my lawyer. Charges were being considered: fraud, identity misuse, conspiracy. Gavin requested a meeting. "I want to explain," he said in the message. "You owe me that much." I did not owe him anything, but I agreed anyway. Not for him, for myself. We met in a quiet cafe downtown. He looked thinner, less polished. The confidence he once wore so easily was gone. "They are overreacting," he said after sitting down. "This was never meant to be permanent." "You said that before?" I replied. He leaned in. "We can still manage this. Together." "There is no together," I said. "You are my wife," he insisted. "Your name is on everything. And that is why this matters," I replied. "You used that," he scoffed. "You benefited from it too. Look at the life we had." I thought of Mrs. Ortega, of her lying on the ER bed, whispering that she thought it was paid. "No," I said. "I paid in ways you never noticed." His eyes hardened. "If you keep pushing, they will destroy you." "They already tried," I said calmly. "It did not work." He sat back, studying me like a stranger. "You really believe this makes you righteous?" he said. "I believe it makes me honest," I replied. When I stood to leave, he reached for my wrist. I pulled away. "This is not over," he said. "I know," I replied, "but it is no longer yours to control." That night, I listened to the recording again, the one where he spoke as me. I did not hear myself in it anymore. I heard a theft of voice, of purpose, of trust, and once you hear that clearly, you cannot unhear it. From that moment on, I stopped wondering how this would end. I started preparing for what came after. The preparation became my anchor. Every morning, I woke up at the same time I used to for night shifts, even though I no longer had anywhere to report. I made coffee, opened my notebook, and reviewed what I already knew: dates, amounts, voices. I did not chase new theories. I tightened the ones that already held. Control, I learned, does not come from knowing everything. It comes from knowing enough and refusing to be rushed. My lawyer and Detective Shaw worked in parallel, one tightening the legal frame, the other widening the investigation. They did not share everything with me, only what I needed to understand my position. That was intentional. It kept me from reacting emotionally, from tipping my hand. Gavin, meanwhile, grew restless. He texted more often. Not angrily, not pleading, strategically. You are letting them turn this into something it is not. We can still resolve this quietly. Think about what you are risking. I read every message and responded to none. One afternoon, Detective Shaw asked me to come in again. This time, his tone was different. We are seeing pressure from his side, he said. Attempts to reframe the narrative. How? I asked. He is positioning you as complicit, Shaw replied. Not publicly yet, internally. I nodded. He always does that. He speaks calmly and lets others draw conclusions. That calm is what makes him effective, Shaw said, but it also leaves patterns. He slid a file across the table. Inside were transcripts of calls Gavin had made after his initial questioning. Not to lawyers, to donors, to billing departments, to one member of the hospital board. He is trying to clean up selectively, Shaw said. Fix just enough to look cooperative. He is still using my name, I said. Yes, Shaw replied. And that is where this turns. The plan he laid out was simple, almost disappointingly so. No traps, no confrontations, just exposure. We are going to let him keep talking, Shaw said, and we are going to make sure it is recorded, verified, and time-stamped. What do you need from me? I asked. Nothing new, he said. Just consistency. Consistency meant restraint. It meant not correcting misinformation immediately. It meant allowing certain assumptions to hang long enough to show their shape. It went against every instinct I had as a nurse. I was used to intervening quickly, to fixing things before they got worse. But this was not a medical emergency. It was a slow bleed. A week later, the district attorney filed formal charges. The news broke quietly at first. A short notice buried in a legal column. Fraud, identity misuse, conspiracy. Gavin was named. I was listed as a witness. The distinction mattered, but not to everyone. Another article appeared, this one speculative. It used phrases like marital involvement and shared benefit. My phone lit up again. This time, I answered one call. It was from a former donor, a man who owned a small auto shop. I just want to hear it from you, he said. Did you know? No, I replied. He paused. That is all I needed. After we hung up, I sat in my car and let myself breathe for a moment. Not everyone would believe me. I accepted that. The goal was no longer universal trust. It was truth on record. That night, Gavin showed up at the house unannounced. I opened the door and did not step aside. He stood on the porch, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning my face. They charged me, he said. Yes, I replied. They are calling it criminal, he continued, as if the word itself were an insult. This was never meant to be criminal. You moved money that was not yours, I said, repeatedly. He shook his head. You let them do this. I did not stop them, I corrected. You could have, he said. You still can. He took a step forward. Testify that you authorized the transfers. Say it was informal. Say it was a misunderstanding. I looked at him, at the man who once told me he admired my integrity because it made him feel safe. No, I said. His face hardened. Then you leave me no choice. You made your choices, I replied. Long before this. He laughed quietly. You really think the court will see you as innocent? As if you were not living off the same money? I think the court will see records, I said, and voices, and timelines. He flinched, just slightly. You recorded me, he said. You recorded yourself, I replied. I just stopped protecting you from it. He stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked away. He did not look back. The next day, I met with the district attorney for a preliminary interview. The room was bright, impersonal. They asked me to walk through the fund again, to explain my safeguards, to describe my relationship with Gavin. When they asked why I had not noticed sooner, I answered honestly. Because I trusted him, I said. And because I was tired. And because I believed good intentions mattered more than systems. The assistant DA nodded. They do not, she said gently. But your honesty does. As the case moved forward, the fund was officially restructured. Oversight added. Dual authorization required. It reopened under hospital management, quietly, efficiently. Mrs. Ortega's daughter sent me a photo. Her mother sitting at the kitchen table, insulin pen beside her, smiling faintly. "Thank you for not forgetting us," the message read. I held my phone and let the image steady me. Gavin's lawyer requested mediation. My lawyer declined. Then came the plea discussion. "He is looking for reduced sentencing," my lawyer told me. "He is offering cooperation." "Against whom?" I asked. "Anyone he can," she replied, "including you, if it helps." I felt no panic, only resolve. "What is his leverage?" I asked. "Minimal," she said, "because his own recordings contradict him." That night, I listened again to the voicemail where he spoke as me. This time, I did not feel invaded. I felt detached. That voice no longer belonged to me. I realized then that my role in this story had changed. I was no longer reacting, I was positioning. When the trial date was set, I marked it in my notebook and closed the cover. This was no longer about clearing my name alone. It was about ensuring the truth could not be rearranged later to suit someone else's comfort. Gavin had built his life on the assumption that silence could be managed, that trust could be redirected, that calm speech could erase harm. He had underestimated one thing, that once a story is told accurately, it becomes very difficult to untell, and I was done being quiet. The escalation did not come with raised voices or public scenes. It came quietly, dressed as concern. 3 days after the trial date was set, I received an email from the state nursing board. The subject line was neutral, follow-up documentation request. Inside, they asked for additional records related to medication handling during my last year on night shift. Nothing directly tied to the fund, just enough to widen the scope. I forwarded it to my lawyer. "They are testing pressure points," she replied. "This is not random. Pressure arrived in other ways too. A former colleague texted to say someone had called asking questions about my work habits. Another nurse mentioned a rumor that I had been overly dependent on pain medication after long shifts. The story was vague, unattributed, and carefully deniable. It had Gavin's fingerprints all over it. That afternoon, Detective Shaw confirmed what I already suspected. "He hired a private investigator," he said. "They are trying to build an alternate narrative." "About me," I said. "Yes," Shaw replied. "About instability, about motive." I laughed softly, surprised by the sound. "He is trying to prove I am unreliable, so my testimony looks emotional." "Exactly," Shaw said, "which is why you need to stay boring." Boring. Calm. Documented. Those words became my rules. I returned every email. I submitted every requested record. I answered questions with dates and facts, never explanations. When asked how I felt, I said I was cooperating fully. Gavin, on the other hand, did not stay boring. The local paper ran another piece, this one quoting an unnamed source close to the defendant. It suggested marital conflict, financial stress, and a blurred line between charity and personal benefit. My name was not dragged directly, but the implication hung there like smoke. I did not respond publicly. Instead, I met with my lawyer and the assistant district attorney to review evidence once more. This time, they played a new recording. It was Gavin, speaking to someone I did not recognize. "She is spiraling," his voice said. "She cannot handle the attention. If you push a little, she will crack." I sat very still as the audio ended. "That was recorded 2 days ago," the ADA said, "after charges were filed. So he is still talking," I said. "Yes," she replied, "and he is still wrong." Donna says, "That night, I took a long walk through my neighborhood. The air was warm, the sky dark and clear. I needed to feel something steady beneath my feet. I passed houses with lights on, televisions flickering behind curtains, lives moving forward. Halfway down the block, I noticed a car parked where it had not been before. A gray sedan. It did not follow me when I turned around. It did not move at all. Still, my chest tightened. When I got home, I locked the door and stood there for a moment, listening. The house was quiet. I poured water, drank it slowly, and reminded myself that fear was part of this phase. It did not mean danger. It meant resistance. The next morning, Renee called early. "He is pushing harder," she said. "Someone from administration asked me if you had ever seemed overwhelmed, like they were fishing. Did you answer?" I asked. "I told them you were competent and thorough," she replied, "and that you saved more lives than most people ever notice." I thanked her and hung up, my throat tight. By the end of the week, the private investigator's presence was no longer subtle. I noticed the same car near the grocery store, a man standing too long near the pharmacy counter. I documented everything: dates, times, locations. I sent it all to my lawyer. "They are crossing a line," she said. "And that helps us." It helped sooner than I expected. Detective Shaw called that evening. "They contacted a donor," he said, "tried to get him to say you approved cash withdrawals." "And?" I asked. "And he recorded the call," Shaw replied. "He did not like being coached." I closed my eyes and let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding. "That will be entered," Shaw added, "as witness intimidation." The following day, the judge issued a warning to Gavin's legal team. No further contact with witnesses, no indirect pressure. The language was sharp. Gavin responded by requesting a meeting with me. Again. This time, I declined. My lawyer conveyed my refusal. The reply came back within hours. "He is trying to show good faith." Good faith was what he had spent years eroding. That weekend, I received a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single page. "You are ruining lives that did not need to be ruined." The handwriting was unfamiliar. The message was not. It was the same logic Gavin used, stripped of his voice. I handed the letter to Detective Shaw on Monday morning. "That makes 3, he said. "Documented." As the pressure mounted, something unexpected happened. The noise stopped affecting me the way it had before. I stopped scanning faces in public. I stopped rehearsing explanations in my head. The truth had become heavier than the fear. During a pretrial hearing, Gavin appeared thinner, his suit slightly rumpled. He did not look at me. When his lawyer argued that the fund's structure was informal and prone to confusion, the judge listened politely and then asked a simple question. "Why was a secondary phone used?" the judge said. Silence followed. That was the moment I knew the escalation had failed. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. I walked past them without stopping. Cameras flashed. Voices called my name. I did not turn. That evening, Mrs. Ortega's daughter called again. "They are delivering her medication tomorrow," she said. "Regular schedule now." "That is good," I replied. "She asked about you," her daughter added. "She said you should not be sad. She said some people are meant to fix things, not own them." I sat down slowly, the words settling in my chest. As the trial drew closer, my lawyer prepared me for testimony. We practiced answers, not scripts, just clarity. "Do not explain what was not asked," she said. "Let the record do the work. It is loaded." The night before the final pretrial conference, I stood in my kitchen and looked around. The table where Gavin once spread his papers. The counter where the checkbook used to sit. The quiet felt earned now. I understood something then that I had not before. Escalation is not always about force. Sometimes it is about narrowing options until only the truth remains survivable. Gavin had tried to widen the field, to muddy it, to exhaust me into silence. Instead, he had documented his own reach. And with every move he made to tighten control, he had only made the outline of what he did clearer. By the time the court doors opened again, there would be nowhere left for his version of events to stand. Not because I fought louder, but because I stayed. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not physically, but in the way spaces feel when emotions are deliberately kept out. The air conditioning hummed softly. Wood polish to a dull shine lined the walls. At the front, the judge's bench stood elevated, not dramatic, just immovable. This was not a place for speeches. It was a place for records. I arrived early and sat in the second row, hands folded in my lap. My lawyer sat beside me, a legal pad open, pen resting across the top. She did not speak. Neither did I. We had already said everything that mattered, just not out loud yet. Gavin was brought in a few minutes later. He wore a dark suit that no longer fit quite right. The confidence he once carried, like a second skin, had thinned. He did not look at me, He looked at the table in front of him, as if answers might be written there. When the judge entered, the room rose, then settled again into stillness. The prosecution began with facts, not accusations. Facts, dates of transfers, amounts, account numbers, screenshots projected onto a screen behind the witness stand. The assistant district attorney spoke in a measured voice, as if narrating a process rather than a crime. "These funds were designated for medical assistance," she said. "They were transferred without authorization, routed through intermediary accounts, and deposited into an account controlled by the defendant." Gavin's lawyer objected twice. Both objections were overruled. Then the recordings were introduced. The first voicemail played through the courtroom speakers. Gavin's voice filled the space, calm and reassuring. "This is Maya Hart," he said. "Release the medication today. The fund will cover it." A murmur moved through the room, quickly silenced by the judge. The assistant district attorney did not pause. She let the recording end naturally, then played the second. "Transfer it tonight," Gavin's real voice said this time. "She will not notice." It's options. The contrast was stark. 2 tones, 2 intentions, 1 person. I stared straight ahead, my jaw tight, my breathing slow. Hearing it in that room was different from hearing it in my lawyer's office. There was no space here to soften what it meant. The judge leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Hart," he said, addressing Gavin directly, "do you dispute that this is your voice?" Gavin swallowed. "No, Your Honor. It's a very for. Do you dispute that you represented yourself as your wife in these communications?" "No," he said again, quieter this time. "And do you dispute that the funds were deposited into your personal account?" "No." Silence settled over the room, heavy and complete. The defense shifted strategy. They argued intent, that the funds were borrowed, that there was no intent to permanently deprive beneficiaries, that the defendant had planned to repay the amounts once temporary financial strain eased. The assistant district attorney asked one question in response. "Did any of the beneficiaries receive the promised medication during that period?" "No," Gavin's lawyer admitted. The judge nodded once. "Intent does not erase impact," he said. When it was time for me to testify, I stood slowly and walked to the witness stand. I placed my hand on the Bible, took the oath, and sat. The assistant district attorney began gently. "Miss Hart, did you authorize your husband to access or transfer funds from the Community Medical Fund?" "No," I said. "Did you ever give him permission to speak on your behalf regarding payments?" "No." "Were you aware of the secondary phone used in these communications?" "No." She nodded and stepped back. The defense attorney stood. His approach was different, softer, almost sympathetic. "Ms. Hart," he said, "you worked long hours, correct?" "Yes." "You trusted your husband with financial matters?" "Yes." "So it is possible," he continued, "that informal arrangements existed, that you may have benefited indirectly from the funds in question?" "No," I said. He smiled faintly. "You lived together, shared expenses." "Yes." "And during the period in question, your household expenses were paid?" "Yes," I replied. "From what source?" "From my salary and our joint account," I said. "Not from the fund." He paused, then asked, "Are you certain?" I met his gaze. "Yes." He shifted. "You never questioned how your husband handled finances?" "I trusted him," I said. "That was my mistake, not my crime." The room was quiet again. The judge asked one final question. "Miss Hart," he said, "when you discovered the misuse of funds, what did you do?" "I documented everything," I replied. "And I reported it." "Ate my down." "To whom?" "To hospital administration, law enforcement, and the nursing board," I said. "And why?" he asked. I took a breath. "Because people were getting hurt. And because silence would have made me complicit." The judge nodded slowly. When the hearing adjourned, there was no dramatic reaction. No shouting, no collapse. Gavin remained seated, his shoulders slumped. His lawyer leaned in to speak to him. My lawyer placed a hand lightly on my arm. Outside the courtroom, reporters waited again. This time, the assistant district attorney spoke briefly. "The evidence speaks for itself," she said. "We will proceed accordingly." I did not speak. Later that afternoon, the judge issued a ruling on the record. The charges would proceed to sentencing. The evidence supported willful misconduct. The misuse of identity and funds was established. Gavin did not look at me as he was escorted out. I sat alone for a moment after the room emptied, my hands resting on the edge of the bench. I felt no triumph, no satisfaction, only a quiet, heavy release. Justice, I realized, does not arrive with applause. It arrives with finality. That evening, I went home and stood in the doorway of the living room. The sun was setting, light slanting across the floor. The house no longer felt thin, it felt empty, in a way that allowed air to move. My phone buzzed once. A message from my lawyer. Sentencing hearing in 2 weeks. We will prepare. I set the phone down and sat on the couch. For the first time since this began, there was nothing more I needed to prove. The record existed now, clean, unavoidable. Everything Gavin had built his defense on had collapsed under the weight of his own words. And for the first time, the truth was no longer something I carried alone. It was something the room had heard. The days between the ruling and the sentencing hearing moved slowly, as if time itself had decided to be careful. Every morning, I woke up expecting to feel lighter. Instead, I felt suspended. The record existed now. The truth had been spoken aloud in a room that mattered. And yet, nothing felt finished. My lawyer called me 2 days after the hearing. "There is a development," she said. I sat down at the kitchen table. "What kind?" "Gavin's attorney reached out," she replied. "They want to discuss a plea modification before sentencing." I closed my eyes. "On what grounds?" "Cooperation," she said. "And mitigation." "Mitigation for whom?" I asked. "For him," she answered. "But indirectly, for you as well." I did not respond right away. "They are asking if you would consider supporting a reduced sentence," my lawyer continued. "Not dismissal, reduction." The words sat between us, heavy and uncomfortable. "Why would I do that?" I asked finally. "Because," she said carefully, "you have leverage, and because the judge will consider victim impact statements. Yours carries weight." After the call ended, I sat alone for a long time. Outside, a lawnmower buzzed. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. Ordinary sounds, grounding and irritating at the same time. I thought about Mrs. Ortega, about the insulin pen on her table, about the families who had been told help was coming, only to wait and wait until it was too late. And I thought about Gavin, not the man in the courtroom, not the defendant, the man I had married, the man who once said he admired how seriously I took responsibility, who said it made him feel safe. Safety, I had learned, means very different things to different people. That evening, Detective Shaw called. "He is talking," he said. "To whom?" I asked. "To us," Shaw replied. "Fully, this time. Names, accounts, methods." I felt a tightening in my chest. "Why now?" "Because he is afraid," Shaw said, "and because he knows you will not lie for him." I went to bed that night and slept deeply for the first time in weeks. The next morning, my lawyer and I met to discuss options. She laid them out plainly, the way she always did. "If you support a reduced sentence," she said, "it will not erase what he did. It will change how the court frames accountability. Less time, more restitution." "And if I do not?" I asked. "Then sentencing proceeds as scheduled," she replied. "Maximum exposure." I stared at the legal pad in front of her. Columns of numbers, years, conditions. "What would you recommend?" I asked. She hesitated. "Legally? Either path is sound. Personally?" She looked at me. "I think you should decide what kind of ending you can live with." That was the question, finally asked out loud. What kind of ending? I asked for time. That afternoon, Mrs. Ortega's daughter invited me over. I had not seen her mother since the hospital, only photos and updates. When I arrived, Mrs. Ortega was sitting by the window, sunlight warming her hands. She smiled when she saw me. "You look tired," she said. "I am," I admitted. She patted the chair beside her, and I sat. On the small table between us lay her medication, neatly arranged in a plastic organizer. "They come every month now," she said, nodding toward it. "On time." "I am glad," I replied. She studied my face for a moment, then said something unexpected. "You look like someone carrying a heavy bag," she said, "even after you put it down." I swallowed. "I do not know how to stop." She shrugged gently. "Sometimes you do not stop. You just choose what you carry next." That night, I made my decision. I called my lawyer the next morning. "I will support a reduced sentence," I said, "but with conditions." She did not interrupt. "He must return every dollar," I continued, "with oversight. Not quietly, publicly. And he must admit what he did. In his own words, in court, no euphemisms." There was a pause. "And one more thing," I added. "He must relinquish all control over financial accounts tied to his name, trusts included, permanently." My lawyer exhaled softly. "That is unusual." "So was what he did," I replied. She agreed to relay the terms. 2 days later, we met in a conference room at the courthouse. Gavin sat across the table from me, flanked by his attorney. He looked older, tired in a way that sleep does not fix. "You want to destroy me," he said quietly. "No," I replied. "I want the truth to be finished." His lawyer cleared his throat. "These conditions are severe." "They are precise," my lawyer said. "There is a difference." Gavin laughed once, bitterly. "You think this makes you merciful?" "I think it makes me honest," I said. "And it makes you visible. Die." He stared at me for a long time. "You could have ended me," he said. "Why did you not?" "Because destroying you would not repair what was broken," I thought. But I did not say that. "Because," I said instead, "you taught me what control looks like, and I am done practicing it." The sentencing hearing was held a week later. The courtroom filled quietly. No press this time. Just officials, lawyers, and a few people who needed to be there. Gavin stood when called. His voice shook at first, then steadied. "I misused funds intended for medical aid," he said. "I used my wife's name without her consent. I caused harm." He did not soften the words. He did not explain them away. I watched him as he spoke, not with anger, not with pity, but with distance. The judge listened carefully. In the end, the sentence was reduced. Restitution ordered. Supervised release. Mandatory financial oversight. No access to charitable funds ever again. As the gavel came down, I felt something release inside me. Not triumph, not relief. Completion. Outside the courtroom, my lawyer squeezed my arm. "You did something rare," she said. "You chose accountability over vengeance." I nodded. I chose an ending I could live with. That evening, I went home alone. I stood in the kitchen and looked at the space where the checkbook used to sit. It was still empty, and that was fine. Because some things, once removed, should never be replaced. The morning after sentencing, I woke up before sunrise. Not because I had to be anywhere. Not because my phone rang or a thought jolted me awake. I simply opened my eyes and realized, for the first time in months, that there was nothing waiting to ambush me. No hearing, no call, no document demanding explanation. The house was quiet in a different way now, not tense, not hollow, just still. I made coffee and stood by the window as the sky over Phoenix shifted from dark blue to pale gray. A delivery truck passed. Somewhere nearby, a garage door opened. Ordinary sounds returned to their place in the world. I checked my phone once. A single message from my lawyer. Restitution schedule confirmed. Oversight committee finalized. That was it. No drama, no congratulations, just closure written in plain language. Later that morning, I drove to the hospital. Not to work. My suspension had not yet been lifted, and the process of review would take time. I knew that. I drove there because for years, the ER parking lot had been the place where my nights ended and my days began. I needed to see it without urgency. I parked in the far row and sat for a moment, watching the automatic doors open and close. Nurses walked in with coffee cups. A paramedic leaned against an ambulance, laughing at something on his phone. Life had not paused for my story, and that was as it should be. Renee met me outside, having just finished her shift. She squinted in the sunlight and smiled when she saw me. "You look different," she said. "How?" I asked. "Like someone who is not bracing for impact," she replied. We walked to a small diner nearby, the kind with vinyl booths and chipped mugs. We talked about nothing important. A new doctor who talked too much. A broken ice machine. Small things that stitched me back into the world. Before we parted, she touched my arm. "You know," she said, "most people would have wanted him crushed." "Ito." "I know," I replied, "and you did not." "No," I said, "I wanted him finished." That afternoon, I received an email from the hospital administration. The nursing board had completed its review. No violations found. My license remained intact. A formal letter would follow, but the conclusion was clear. I sat at the kitchen table and read the message twice. Then I closed the laptop and placed my hands flat on the wood, the same way I had weeks earlier when everything began to unravel. This time, the table felt solid. The fund officially reopened the following week under hospital oversight. A committee now approved every disbursement, dual signatures, clear audits, the system I should have built from the start. I was invited to attend the first meeting as an observer. I sat at the end of the table, listening as numbers were discussed, as requests were approved, as safeguards were debated. No one asked me to speak, and I did not volunteer. Mrs. Ortega's case came up briefly, routine now, approved without discussion. After the meeting, I stepped outside and felt the sun on my face. I realized then that my role had changed. I was no longer the center of this thing, and that was the point. A month later, I ran into Mrs. Ortega at the pharmacy. She stood by the counter, purse tucked under her arm, her medication already bagged. When she saw me, she smiled with recognition that warmed my chest. "They treat me like a regular now," she said, "not like a problem." I smiled back. "You always were regular. They just needed reminding." She reached out and squeezed my hand, her grip stronger than I remembered. "You did good," she said simply. I drove home with the windows down, the desert air hot and honest. At a stoplight, I noticed the space beside me where a gray sedan once lingered. It was empty. Gavin did not contact me again. Through the required reports, I learned he complied. He attended every financial review, every mandated session. He repaid steadily, methodically. The man who once controlled quietly now lived under constant observation. That was not revenge. That was consequence. In the weeks that followed, I returned to work part-time. My first night back in the ER, I stood for a moment before walking through the doors, letting the familiar smells and sounds settle over me. A young nurse looked nervous near the medication cart, triple-checking labels. I recognized the look. "Take your time," I told her gently. "Accuracy matters." She nodded, relieved. Near the end of the shift, a patient tried to hand me a folded bill. "For your trouble," he said. I smiled and shook my head. There is a better place for that now. On my drive home as dawn broke, I thought about the version of myself who believed trust was enough, who thought goodness protected itself. I did not judge her anymore. She had not been naive. She had been untested. Justice did not come to me as punishment or reward. It came as clarity, as boundaries, as systems that do not rely on one person's goodness to function. And the most surprising thing of all was this. Letting go of vengeance did not make me weak. It made the ending clean. I did not rebuild what was taken from me. I rebuilt how I stood in the world, and that was something no one could ever misuse again.